Hey everyone, welcome to our conversation for the film No Man's Land from IFC Films. It is on demand right now. I'll be moderating today's conversation. My name is Scott Mance, and joining us for this conversation for this terrific, gripping, intense, and powerful film, we have director Conor Allyn, we have screenwriter and actor Jake Allyn, and we have actors Jorge Jimenez, Frank Grillo, and George Lopez. Gentlemen, welcome and thank you so much for joining us for this conversation.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
It does start with the script. The script is the thing. So, Jake, I want to start with you. Like, how did this come about? What was the inspiration behind No Man's Land?
Yeah, Conor and I grew up in Texas, but our dad worked a lot in Mexico. And so we grew up going back and forth between Dallas and Mexico, mainly Mexico City. And we really just always felt like we got to see a different side of Mexico than everybody else that we knew growing up. And that was really the initial genesis for this movie, was just to try to make a movie that allowed audiences to see life on the other side.
And we had that initial premise of like, as the issue on the border and immigration stuff, kept being in the news in mostly a negative light. We wanted to do something that was a reverse immigration story, tell the immigration story, but in a whole new way that people haven't necessarily seen before.
Conor, I want to ask, especially in terms of like films that inspired you, like what were some of the films that inspired you, but at the same time making a film that is very much current and very much for today?
Yeah, I mean, I would say especially inspired by the work of Taylor Sheridan recently. He, uses the modern Western to talk about something important, to talk about issues, but it's still a fun movie that is genre, that's thrilling, that's entertaining, and isn't just sort of a family drama or something. And so I think that was kind of a model that we drew upon in our version.
George Lopez, I want to ask, what was the first thing that struck you about reading the screenplay for No Man's Land? And how far into, I'm curious, how far into reading a screenplay like this do you start to think about your approach to your performance?
I've been talking about the border for a long time in stand-up and all of the things that they try to do to curb people from entering the United States, whether it was the thought of a moat, the thought of a brick wall, then you can't see to the other side, then slats, then, what we have now. And then I said, one day they're going to take all the parts and sell the material on the other side, which actually happened. So anything around the world now, there's obviously different things, but really a polarizing part of the world is the border between the United States and Mexico. And it just demonizes people on both sides. So coming into that, I know that I'm not as Mexican as people in Mexico because I'm from the United States. So to look at somebody who, like Jake, went into Mexico on a horse, I chased him over there. I think he became more comfortable in Mexico than I did, because I think what's great about this character is that he doesn't really have command of the language of Spanish, which I think naturally, I think Frank, his character, says, I don't speak Spanish, and I don't speak Spanish either. So I think the fact that you're a little bit lost in a country so close to the United States was a great place to start.
How about for you, Jorge? What were the things that struck you about the screenplay? And if you could tell me about the first conversation that you had with Conor and Jake about your character and making the film.
Well, what I like about the story is that it's different than most of the things we see on film and TV series and all that. The story is told from a different perspective. And what I love about the script is that there's no good or bad. I mean, you have both. And most of the time, you always get the Mexican is the bad guy, most of the time, like all the shows is like that.
And Jorge knows because he's played many a Sicario.
Yeah. I had to be that guy.
Yeah, and actually, that's what I get to play a lot. I mean, the bad guy, and I get a lot of those. So basically, on this one, you get to see both sides, and you get to see that every well, that's what I got from it. That every person has the good and the evil.
You know, in the scene that I did with Jorge with his a child there and in the hospital there, one of the things I think that we're talking about is, you know, I'm a parent, you know, I'm a ranger, I'm there, and he's, you know, the worst thing you could do is lose a child. And there's that kind of silence where, not having a command of the language, you don't really know how to sympathize. I'm just trying to get information, and it's a uncomfortable moment. And, you know, he's trying to get his son, and I'm, you know, just trying to fill out some paperwork. It's just, you know, powerful.
Frank, I want to ask about your preparation for the role, and, you know, your scenes working with Jake. I mean, they're really, really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, you know, my prep was probably like everybody else's. I didn't really know a whole lot about how this existed even. You know, look, we all understand how a lot of Americans vilify and demonize Mexicans for trying to come over to the United States. I mean, I come from Italian immigrant parents who did the same thing. You know, they came to the United States for a better life for their families. And that's, you know, so I started to do a little research about what this area in this part of the world is. And I was fascinated. And it's interesting because there are a lot of people like George, who are Mexican-American, who don't speak Spanish fluently. You know, they're third generation Mexican-Americans, and they just don't speak fluent Spanish, and they work along that border. I found that to be fascinating. But I did a lot of research and reading and kind of incorporated a bunch of what I was reading into the circumstance of the piece. And yeah, I mean, you know, I was excited by the boy, I call them the boys. I was excited by the boys and how gutsy it was for them to take this on at an early stage in their careers, because, you know, there's a certain gravitas to this, especially now with, you know, one guy being impeached and getting the hell out of here, thank God. But it's you know, it is a polarizing situation. And I mean, I'm babbling, but, you know, I was excited to get involved and be a piece of telling this story about people coming from a place that is next door to us. And we're building walls and trying to keep them out. And the country was built on that very premise, and we're trying to stop it. You know, by the way, I don't care if you're a liberal, a conservative, or this, that, and a third. If you live in this country, that's what this country was built on. End of story. Yeah.
Well, Frank, the gravitas you're talking about is extremely, what makes this movie so relevant, and for Conor and for Jake. So in capturing that gravitas, in capturing the authenticity and the realism, and making it completely equal for both sides, how did you accomplish that? What kind of prep and rehearsal and research did you do to make sure that you did this story right?
Well, I mean, certainly, like Frank said, if you're going to tackle something important, and we wanted to, and that was, you know, we wanted to do a movie that was really a good thriller, but like it was about something really important. And once you settle with that, the expectations are high, and you know, embarrassing if you fail, and it's you're ready for it.
I feel like in a movie like this.
So I think the biggest thing was just be authentic in every way that we could. Yeah. Starting with the script, you know, you had a Mexican co-writer named David Barraza. We shot 80% of the movie takes place in Mexico, and so we shot the whole movie in Mexico. You know, we used almost entirely Mexican cast and crew, except for the couple of American actors, people on this call mostly who came down with us. Everyone else, you know, was Mexican, not Mexican Americans or Puerto Ricans or whatever playing Mexicans, but you know, Mexicans like Jorge, and down to the you know, the horse, everything we did on the horses, you know, try to be authentic with that, and got, you know, real cowboys.
Yeah, I think another thing that really helped was trying to stay as flexible and as open in performance or in the script or in directing to the reality of the situation. Frank was talking about all the research that he did, and you know, the title No Man's Land wasn't even the title of the film until about 2 months before we started shooting, because I came across this New York Times article about no man's land, these places in South Texas that are north of the Rio Grande but south of the border. And we just thought, how could we not go into that?
You shared that article, and we were
You-
like, that's the title of the movie, and that's where
Yeah.
this should start. It shouldn't just be some area on the border. This should be these specific spots.
You have to stay open to that stuff, I think.
But also, you know, like when Frank and, you know, Andie, when they say to each other, you know, what happened to us, because at one time they were very sympathetic to people who were coming over the border, and they would leave water out there, and you know, it wasn't an issue. You know, they cut the fence, maybe the cattle went out, but over time you see their frustration, which is, I think, what a lot of people feel is frustration of an area that has spent, you know, they spent billions of dollars on this area, and there hasn't been an answer. So the patience of one family, you see, because of over time, it just becomes like this, you know, this moment of what happened to us.
Yeah. And you know, look, we all know, I mean, I'm a grown adult, I'm in my 50s. And you know, there comes a point where your life becomes, you're losing your house and you're losing your livelihood, and your life becomes so myopic, and you forget about being empathetic and sympathetic and the problems of the world, because you have so many problems of your own. And I think that's what happens to this family. It becomes so, you know, are we going to lose the house, or when we're going to lose the house? And, you know, these people that aren't actually, you know, good, honest Mexicans, there's a criminal element as well, and dealing with that. And so then you become hard to the human aspect of what the problem is. And that's what we're faced with in the movie.
And that was part of what Frank was touching on there was part of what makes it honest and makes it a true story about this issue, which is that it's not like good, that it's not like Mexico's just perfect, and that the right is painting it in a violent way. There is a violent aspect to it, and so we showed that too. Tried to be truly honest and fair. You know, you have to say that, yeah, there is violence on that side of the border. There are narcos, but then also show the good side of it. And same thing like with Frank's character, it's definitely a courageous choice for him. You know, I remember Frank talking on the night when we shot the big scene where Jackson shoots Gustavo's son. After that shooting, when you're like trying to get the Mexicans away before the cops show up, you were like, yeah, and I think I'll stick my rifle right in his face and tell him to get out of here, and that'll make me seem like a bad guy, and that's a good thing. And that's a courageous choice for an actor. You're like, you know, you gotta be evil for a second. You're protecting your kid. That's what allows you to do it. But you're taking on the sort of the yoke of a real bad guy, and that's the truth of it.
Yeah, listen, you know, John Wayne is make believe. You know, good people do bad, stupid things, and bad people do good things sometimes. You know, and that's the reality of it. You know, like I said, the human condition, it changes our behavior, and so the things we never thought we were able or capable of doing, all of a sudden you're sticking a gun in somebody's face. You know. And by the way, you know, at some point, we all know this, we've all been around a long time, at some point a movie takes on a life of its own. So you might be making a thriller with you know, political undertones, and all of a sudden this movie becomes what it wants to become. And I think this is a film that, you know, because of the timing and the subject matter, I think this movie kind of showed us where to go, as opposed to us showing, you know, making the movie and directing it.
Yeah, the instinctive sort of tone of the thing just take over. I think that's a beautiful part of the movie.
I think for Jorge too, in the scenes with his mom and his son, is that they're hopeful, but there's fear as well. So it's not a given that you're going to make it across that. But he as a father, he's hopeful for his son, and then in an instant, everything changes for everybody. Just it's so dark out there. Just anything can happen. You know. Then
Yeah,
movie, yeah.
yeah. It's,
Hey, I would love to get your take on all of that. Jorge,
Yes.
I would love to get your take on just that whole part of the conversation about how the film takes on a life of its own. It becomes something that was maybe a little different at the very beginning, and certainly your approach to your character.
Well, yeah. One thing is, we'll know when we get the script, we get an idea and a feeling of how do we gonna do things or how things are gonna move along. But once you're there, for me at least, once I'm there and I see the situation and I see everything that I'm surrounded by, it's like Frank saying, something start to happen, even to your body, to your emotions, and suddenly you're living it. So I think that's when magic comes and makes the movie even better than you thought it was gonna be. All those feelings, it's just weird to explain, but I don't know how to explain it, but it's so strong. It becomes real. I mean, I remember that scene when the kid gets shot. I completely forgot about lights and cameras and crew and my coworkers. It's just, it becomes real truth. Even also like in the scene with George when he's getting the report done and all my information. It's like it was like I was living it, and my son was dead for real. It's just that's what I love about good stories and good directing and good actors, and everything becomes true.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's fake until it's not. You know, I definitely felt that with various, you know, we sort of start with one script in like I don't know, 2013 or 2012 or something, and then you start with that script and you have this initial premise of like, okay, reverse immigration story, boy on the border kills a Mexican kid, goes on a journey, something happens, and then you start finding these like bits of truth, you know, these little nuggets of honesty that you find in your research or meeting people or whatever, and then you insert that into the script, and then you sort of like build on that, and then all of a sudden it's sort of like a, you know, a stampede, and then the thing takes a life of its own. Once
it lives, it becomes a living thing, and then you serve it, you know, and that's what happened. That's what I think all of us felt that, and being in Mexico, I think really added to the authenticity. There's just a feeling, there's a thing that happens when you're in Mexico. Mexico is one of my favorite places on the planet. I've spent a lot of time. I've been to Tepito, Mexico. I've been to big crazy places in Mexico, and the people in Mexico. I mean, I don't know why they want to come to America. amazing place. So
That's a great point, Frank.
You know, I went to go order some food after on the way back to the hotel, and there's a calmness in Mexico and in the people. So I'm waiting to order, and then when I order, I said, I'll have some, and you know, we're loud in America, so they all kind of look down at me like, relax.
It's all good.
I was really close, and the look on it, and it's like, are we that loud? Like, can I have a just by your voice, they know you don't belong there, man. They're just they don't really get high. They just kind of in a normal pattern.
Oh, that's great.
So I got to ask, you know, like I said at the top of this conversation, gentlemen, this movie really sticks the landing. The last scene, the last 15, 20 minutes are so powerful and so gripping and so intense. The movie builds up, and it's just like I couldn't breathe for these last like 20 minutes or so. And I want to ask, you know, starting with you, Jake, just take us through just the filming of those final moments.
Well, I definitely, to piggyback on what we were just talking about with the movie changing and just getting out of the way, kind of, Jorge, if you remember, we actively didn't rehearse our scenes where we meet at the end of the movie, and Conor, very thankfully put those scenes at the end of shooting, so that we could just go live our stories that are eventually going to cross paths again, and then see what happens. And so I think, we tried to do that to the best of our ability. I know that scene in the church was one of the longest days of my life, of just, it's a big, long scene where we say one line to each other, it's tough, but I think just trying to pay tribute to the story that we were telling at the end of the movie, how important the whole movie is. It all comes to fruition right there, and just trying to stay honest to that moment.
And to try to, like we talked about at the beginning of this conversation about the message and living up to that, the issue that you're talking about is the fundamental message of, like, is redemption possible? Is it conceivable that after we've hurt each other as badly as we have, we can get over it and not have that be freaking super schmaltzy? How does that come off? And
I was just gonna jump in. The day we shot that was the day that a photo had been released of, I think, a dad and his daughter had drowned trying to cross, and there was kind of a photo of them, and that's just like, when you see that again, when fake believe becomes real, you realize, okay, I need to throw away all my acting BS, and I need to go do it for them. You know what I mean? Because it's going to be a real story for somebody.
Jorge, I would love to know, how do you hope people feel when they watch this movie, when this movie is over? What's the takeaway that you hope people take with them?
Well, like I was telling you, I think a lot of people who watches this movie is gonna empathize with the fact that the way that the story is told. We don't see much things like this, much scripts, movies like this one. So I think, of course, they're gonna like it as a movie. That's for sure. But I think that there's something very special, and that's the opportunity that we have as an actors and directors and writers to speak for a lot of people who cannot do it, or cannot raise their hand, or they're not listening. This is an opportunity for them, and a tribute for all these people that has been going through things like this, and immigrants, and all these things that happen at the border. I think this is gonna open a new face to it, and I think that's gonna be a great, something very great.
Great it is. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Jorge, Frank, Jake, Conor, George. No Man's Land is on demand now. Please do spread the word for everyone to watch this terrific film. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for this amazing conversation. And
Thank you.
be safe. Thank you.